We always bring everyone in a little bit early because we don't see any point in making y'all wait in line. But then the trouble is we then have to entertain you for 5 minutes before we actually have to have the panel start. And I am the worst improver on the face of the planet.
I'm a very good improver, but I have to try very, very hard to keep things PG.
I was gonna say, you killed me last night.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who, like, during my non-professional conversation, I will use the F word as punctuation. But then I have to, like, get up and be respectable.
That's because you're from the Ozzy Osbourne part of England. I mean, that's like the first word all children learn in the West Midlands.
Here's the thing. I have a fake American accent because I'm kind of afraid of Whovians. Because I used to have incidents where people would be like, how much, like, people would come up to me and be like, yeah, I grew up in the UK, and they'd be like, do you like John Locke? What do you think about John Locke? You've seen all of Sherlock, haven't you? And I'm like, I've seen one episode. I don't even know who Jeremy Bandersnatch is.
Here's the thing is, Kid, when people find out Kid is British, they like rush up to Kid and they like try to prove like how British they are too, even though they've never set foot in Britain in their entire lives.
I did find out I apparently do like Doctor Who, because a couple weeks ago we got drunk at a comic shop and played Flux. And I was like, I know who that is. And they got the robot dog, yay.
But, what was I gonna say? Kid has coined the term Teaboo.
No, I stole that from Tumblr. Like everything else in my life, I stole it from Tumblr. Yay! I'm just like, my hairstyle, my pronouns, probably this whole, like, ensemble.
I know who you stole that outfit from.
Every gay person ever? I dressed like a 90s guy from a 90s ska band. And the funny thing, like, for years I was like, nobody knows I'm bi, right? I come off, like, pretty straight. And you would just look at me and go, I used, before I started wearing, like, plaid jackets, my big thing was just, like, wearing leather biker jackets over all my clothes.
Because that's incredibly straight as well.
Yeah, I used to dress like a greaser, and it was ridiculous.
You're as straight as a slinky.
Okay, but here's the thing, we have 2 minutes left. We need to improv a little harder. Okay, if you were a flavor of ice cream, what would you be?
Unfortunately for you, I'd be vanilla.
Because you are very, very just uneventful.
I'm so vanilla that even Bluebell rejected me.
Okay. I'm just gonna say, one of those ice creams with all like the weird little bits in it, like the biscuits and the half-dead cakes and the tiny cherries.
You're rainbow sherbet.
Yeah. No, I'm mostly just boring flavor.
Boring flavor? You're more interesting to me.
Okay. What else are we doing tonight?
We're doing the Naked Men panel.
Alright.
I just saw like 4 people just suddenly perk up as soon as I said Naked Men panel.
At 5 or 6, we are doing the AMV League Nationals, the big sort of death tournament for our string of AMV contests.
It's the winners of 12 AMV contests nationwide, all pitted against each other. So yeah, that's a heck of a show. And then later tonight, we're doing a panel called the Big Bad Bar Panel.
Which is very, very 18 plus.
It's it starts off as an educational panel about gay manga made for gay men, but
then I use examples.
Yeah, the thing about gay manga made for gay men is it tends to have a whole lot of extremely explicit, muscular, hairy, naked men. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, then there'll be plenty to drink.
Oh, you mean if you're thirsty?
Yes, if you're thirsty.
Come to this panel if you're thirsty.
Sorry. And if you like the idea but aren't so into seeing naked men, tomorrow morning we're doing a panel in the similar vein, but all ages, called Hot Dads of Anime.
Yes. And we have added to that panel slides for the 3 most requested dads that we keep getting asked about every single con.
Did you put in the one I told you to put in yesterday?
I put in a slide for him. I do not have time to watch 600 episodes of that show. I did that when I was 8.
Okay. Anyway, let's kick off the panel. It's finally 1:30. We are Vitamin H. Welcome to Mahou Shoujo Universe. This is our first time doing this panel, so everything is going to go wrong.
Yes. After having done convention entertainment for almost 5 years, I can tell you the first time you do a panel is always the time it breaks. So welcome to the worst possible version of this panel.
I will say, no. The worst time you do a panel will be the times you're practicing it, and then, once you show it in front of everyone, then everything unexpected will go wrong.
And fire rains down from the sky. We should start like a role-playing panel called Rocks Fall, Everyone Dies. Alright, anyway, we are going to kick off Mahou Shoujo Universe.
I mean, that's basically what your Final Fantasy Sucks is going to be.
Oh yes. Alright, let's talk about Magical Girl.
Welcome to Mahou Shoujo Universe with Professor Bowyer and my wife, Professor Bowyer.
We're going to be exploring the Mahou Shoujo Universe, plotting its many star systems, unusual galactic phenomena, the birth and death of entire universes,
and most importantly, adorable sparkling manuscripts.
Now, as with most of our panels, you can expect the usual dose of sarcasm, bad jokes, and obscure pop culture references.
And me trying to take it seriously while Kid sparks out one-liners that kill me and make me go face down on the table.
But before we get into that, we're going to need to limit our field of study a bit because the Mahou Shoujo universe is vast, with over 150 different worlds.
And that's only counting anime class celestial bodies. If we wanted our scope to include manga, visual novels, and or video games, we'd be looking into the thousands.
So in this panel, we're mostly going to be focusing on animated magical girls. But
what is a magical girl?
I've never watched anime before. What a magical girl? Please help me with Japanese lessons.
We all know what magical girls are, but for the sake of this panel, we need to set some guidelines and a strict definition. Magical girls are female characters that have supernatural powers that are hidden from society. Typically, these characters, they have alter egos or aliases they use when going magic, and typically the show's main focus is on the conflict between these girls' mundane lives and the strange phenomena they wield.
We're using the word typically a lot because there are some shows that break the rules, and hopefully we'll get into those a little bit later, but first we got to meet the OG Mahou Shoujo.
The very first Mahou Shoujo.
Because it was one of my dad's all-time favorite sitcoms, and also it is relevant. That was a 1964 American sitcom about a housewife who has basically unlimited godlike power, but mainly uses her abilities to bake apple pies and stuff.
And the show reached a supernatural level of popularity in Japan.
Yes, it was brought to Japan as Okusama wa Majo, my wife is a witch. And, yes, it was very, when they translate stuff into Japanese, they tend to get, like, super literal, kind of like how one of the Evil Dead movies in Japan is called Captain Supermarket.
They actually came out with a J-drama remake of Bewitched in 2004.
Yes, so if you're into Japanese dramas, you can watch Bewitched, the modern Japanese remake.
But the show was so incredibly popular in Japan that just a few months after the show aired, a guy by the name of Mitsutaro Yokoyama decides to take the magic-based comedy story and put his own spin on the concept by making her 10 years old.
Now, Sally the Witch is considered by a lot of people to be the first magical girls anime. It's about a magical princess who travels to Earth, and she loves it so much that she summons herself a house. She then spends over 180 episodes using her near godlike powers to solve, like, everyday 10-year-old problems.
And
like
bake cakes.
Yes, and like not having enough cake or being bad at school.
And despite being effectively the first Mahou Shoujo and a very important landmark show, we don't have very much to say about it. First, the show was never licensed or even fan subbed, so we can't really talk about the plot in any kind of depth.
Although to be honest, from what I've seen, the few episodes I've seen, the plot isn't super deep. In many ways, Sally feels like an old school Hanna-Barbera cartoon, more so than what you'd think of as an anime. Outside of the first and last episodes, there's no overarching plot, and most episodes are just pure 60s cartoon goofiness.
Oh no, I accidentally shrunk myself and I'm being attacked by a mole in an underground tunnel. I need to conjure up a bunch of flashlights and stick them to some ants so the mole goes blind.
Now, of course, there will be some people in the audience who've done a lot of research and will say, technically there was another magical girl like 2 weeks earlier, so let's talk about her.
Himitsu no Aku-chan is the other first macho show, and it's a lot closer to what we think of as a magical girl story.
The thing is, Sally the Witch, the anime was the first magical girl anime, but this was the first magical girl manga. And this had a very, very different story. This is, like you said, much closer to what we think of as a magical girl.
Akko finds a magic mirror, uses it to transform herself into all kinds of different stuff for dumb, selfish kid reasons.
There's a whole bunch of episodes that are like, oh man, I have a math test tomorrow. I'm gonna disguise myself as a teacher and steal the answer sheet.
Like, imagine if every single episode of Sailor Moon was one of those season 1 disguise pen episodes.
Now the show had a very strong moral thrust with lessons for children about friendship, honesty, and hard work. But again, this is not exactly Evangelion. There isn't a lot of plot.
Sailor says.
Oh, we'll talk about that later.
That said, Akko and Sally represent two different subgenres which form the two main galaxies of the Mahou Shoujo genre.
Yes. Japanese scholars have referred to magical girls as being divided into the Sally type, where the heroine is a girl born with magical abilities and who needs to learn to understand the real world.
And then we have the Akko type, where the main girl is either totally average or even kind of a screw-up, and then has to learn to handle the responsibility of having immense powers.
The best way I could find to sort of use as a physical example for these two were actually Queen Serenity and her reincarnation Usagi.
One's a magical alien princess, the other's a ditzy high schooler who cries a lot.
Now, as the 70s roll on, we see the magical girl genre picking up a fair bit of speed, almost all of these shows coming from a little indie studio called Toei Anime. What's a Toei? And here's the thing, while some of these were based on popular shoujo manga, the majority of these are original stories which rely very heavily on recycling tropes from Sally and Akko, usually to much, much worse results.
But then something interesting happened.
Yes, because Toei decided that for their next magical girl show, they're going to hire a certain action writer. With this footage that I can't put my finger on.
You know, somehow I don't think the target audience of this show is preteen girls.
Let's talk about what's up with that and why this show is so boiling.
The creator of Devilman
was hired to create a shoujo romance story for Toei, But early on in the show's production, the TV station the show was supposed to air on told the staff that the show would instead air around 6 o'clock at night in a time slot typically used for shows for boys.
So the original style was scrapped, and Go Nagai retooled the show to be a sci-fi action series with tons of fan service.
The show was canceled very, very quickly, but gained a cult following, and its mix of magical girl elements and abundant nudity would leave a long-lasting impact on the genre as a whole. But as we are moving into the 80s, we're gonna notice something kind of strange.
In Kimitsu no Ako had a magic mirror. In Marvelous Melmo had a jar of magic hormone pills. Choppy the Witch and almost every single girl after her has a unique wand, which were designed to be so iconic that we've done entire trivia categories asking people to tell us which stow a particular magic stick comes from. And this trend really ramped up when we got to the 80s. Does anyone want to hazard a guess why?
Like, why is there so much focus on magic wands?
Toys.
Because money!
Yes. Honestly, if I was 8, I would probably find that amazing.
Are you kidding? I'm 36 and I still want one of those.
But yes, as you said, it was because toys.
Because if there's one thing anime's good at, it's giving children power fantasies that their parents will spend tons of money helping them act out.
Goodness knows how much my parents spent on like Pokemon action figures and plushies and Digivices and Beyblades, and I'm so sorry, Mom and Dad.
My mom was broke. I just had to go outside and play with a stick and pretend it was like a magic sword.
In my day, we just imagined things. Now, here's the thing. We're not
you
gonna...
had 2 Digivices as a kid. You had a book of Cloud cards.
Oh, yeah.
You had Yu-Gi-Oh cards. You had Beyblade.
Yeah,
You told me how disappointed you were the first time you spun a Beyblade and a dragon didn't come out of it.
I was not a very smart child.
Wait a minute. Is that also why every Mahou Shoujo show has a cute animal mascot?
Yes, because as well as selling plastic magical wands and plastic swords, you can sell adorable plushies
that you can probably buy in this dealer's room right now for $75.
I can see a QB up in the front, and I've seen people bring around all kinds of cute mascots.
How many of y'all own one of those Ryo Oki plush backpacks?
Well,
Not the backpack. I just have the Ryoki plush.
Plus, Ryo-Oki is kind of very niche, but we'll talk about this in a sec. Now, as we're moving through the 80s, we see a very interesting narrative strain that we don't see in a lot of modern shows.
In earlier shows, the magical girl's transformation will churn a preteen girl into an older teen or even an adult.
Now, there's an obvious wish fulfillment angle here, the desire to be like, more graceful and glamorous and mature.
But at the same time, that can lead to some pretty awkward implications. In a lot of these shows, the main character will have a crush on an older boy who doesn't return their feelings because she's 11.
But since that guy doesn't know that the manic pixie dream girl he met the other day is actually secretly a 12-year-old using space magic, he'll fall in love with her older self.
And you can kind of see why this trope's not really a thing anymore.
Yes.
But speaking of tropes, let's talk about another big thing that emerged around this era.
We're going to talk about the #1 influence on modern magical girls. Because as well as the majority of the early magical girl shows, Toei were also the people who created Kamen Rider, and I'm going to call them the Ranger series because I have many friends who will tell me, like, Super Sentai is not Power Rangers, and we especially need to make sure to make that distinction when we go to Ushikan. But yes, 1970s and 80s Japanese superhero shows were absolutely massive. They appealed to both boys and girls, and one particular young woman who fell in love with them was a Japanese chemist who just happened to be very good at art. And so this lady decided that she loved to draw and she loved superhero shows, so she was going to combine her two main loves. Da-da-da-da-da. It's time for the magic to happen.
Codenamed Sailor V, the prototype for Sailor Moon that basically nobody cares about.
And here's the thing, we're not being mean. Even when I try to look up more information about Sailor Moon V on the Sailor Moon wiki, it has like 3 lines about the manga's plot, which is a shame because from what I've seen, it's a lot of fun. But yes,
because after the first few chapters of Codenamed Sailor V were released,
Naoko Takeuchi
was approached by Toei Studios and they're saying, hey, we want you to pitch an anime version, but instead of one sailor superhero, we want you to have a whole team of badass sidekicks.
And so the face of Magical Girls was changed forever with the creation of Sailor Moon. Now the interesting thing about Sailor Moon was it combined everything girls loved about shoujo manga with everything girls loved about superhero shows. So you have a team of super badass girls who can shoot lasers and fight monsters. But you know what? We are mentioning tokusatsu a lot. Are there really that many similarities between, you know, Kamen Rider and Sailor Moon? Well, let's take a look. Henshin! That's right, while many old school Mahou shows did have the girls transforming into various disguises, the switch was usually really simple and usually off-screen.
Cutie Honey introduced the concept of transformation TNA,
where the girl would get kinda naked while transforming.
or pretty darn naked.
Very naked. But it was Sailor Moon that really codified the style of magical girl transformation.
And the style of magical transformation was strangely like Sentai transformation.
Yes.
Because in Sentai shows, the scouts transform into their uniforms one piece at a time with lots of flashy lasers and a distinct final pose. What's better than poses?
Super awesome flashy laser beam attacks!
Wait, is that the Gold Ranger from Power Rangers Zeo?
Again, it's O-Ranger, it's not Power Rangers, it's O-Rangers. And yes, and before anyone gets kind of mad with me for using a show that came out after Sailor Moon, I was specifically looking for the wandiest finishing move I could find, the one that most looked like Sailor Moon's old attack.
And there's one more thing that Combat Mahou stole from ye old Sentai. Dumbass looking monsters.
You see, when Sailor Moon was adapted into an anime, they decided to add a whole ton of filler episodes. And in order to achieve that, they integrated a Monster of the Week format,
Introducing such memorable antagonists as Vacuum Cleaner Bikini Model,
wait,
Yif McGiff,
and
Wheel Crotch.
so yes.
So if Sailor Moon ripped off Sentai shows, what exactly did we rip off of Sailor Moon?
Basically everything if you're talking about the 90s. Now, Sailor Moon was a smash hit, not only with its original target audience, but with boys too. Everybody loved these shows. I mean, like when these came out in America, how many of y'all guys were, you were rocking that Sailor Moon too? Woo. That was a fun show.
This inspired a whole movement of mangaka to create these crossover shows, which mixed traditionally feminine interests with action-packed battles, and people loved them. These shows weren't just massive in Japan either. They got really big in Europe and South America.
And so American executives, specifically companies like Saban and Deke, noticed that these shows had a massive worldwide appeal that was sure to sell lots and lots of toys, and so they thought, you know what we need to do? We need to get some America up in this.
You don't have to.
I've clashed with Jedi in battle over and over again, and today I got taken in by his cool eyes and that deep, rich voice. His really cute curls. Sorry? All right. The point is, no matter who you are, guy or girl, don't settle for someone who treats you badly. Someone may be cute, but if that someone hurts you in any way or makes you feel badly about yourself, it's time to get help and move on. You deserve the best. Don't you settle for less.
So no lie, Kid was looking for a Sailor Says, and this was probably one of the better ones.
I am really surprised that like Sailor Moon is like, hey children, you know what? Relationship abuse is bad. I'm like, damn Usagi, that's heavy.
But I mean, you know why Sailor Says had to be a thing, right? We talk about this when we quite a bit when we do Anime in America tomorrow. Because Sailor Moon was such a big part of coming over to America. But the whole reason they had to include Sailor Says is because they cut so much out of the anime that they needed to fill the extra like 3-4 minutes.
And the funny thing is, if, a lot of these are up on YouTube. If you go and look some of them up, there's one that is literally just Usagi listing different types of food she likes. Like, I enjoy cakes and salads and Chinese food and burgers. Okay, bye guys.
Anyway, crappy dubs.
Yes, let's talk about the fact that, as we're going to mention tomorrow, there's a lot you can show on Japanese TV that you can't show on American TV, and I'm about to expose you guys to something incredibly obscene, and I do apologize for this. Oh no. So, yeah, let's talk about this. One of the biggest things in Sailor Moon was they had to Photoshop a ridiculous amount of stuff. But here's the thing, if you look at that image of the left,
It's not that freaking graphic.
you can't, literally all you can see is her arm. But some poor schmuck was paid to Photoshop the heck out of this.
And of course, the thing I will never stop being angry about, cousins.
Adult women in a committed relationship. Oh,
That
no.
can't possibly exist. There's no thing as committed women in a...
No. I love you too. There is no such thing as magic space lesbians. But the thing is, you know, a lot of these shows were censored to heck. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Sailor Moon wasn't just censored for things like mild nudity and violence. There were massive swaths cut out for delinquent behavior.
Yeah, there was like the episode where Usagi uses her pen to sneak into a nightclub, and that was cut for delinquent behavior. Because in 1993, when this show came out in the US, there was a overarching belief in the industry that girls over the age of 8 never watched cartoons. So they focus tested Sailor Moon with girls who were like 4 and 5.
And it did horribly. Now the thing is, a lot of these shows were heavily censored, but okay, how many of y'all remember back in the 90s absolutely loving these craptacular versions of these shows? I mean, when you watch stuff on like Cartoon Network, Fox Kids, we didn't know that there was like a better version. And I talked to so many people. I was not a Mew Mew Power person, but I know so many people who are just absolutely gaga over this show. Me personally, the terribly censored cartoon that I fell for was a little show called Cardcaptor Sakura. So let's talk about Cardcaptor Sakura. When this was licensed in the US, they wanted to make sure that it would have the same cross-demographic appeal that Sailor Moon had, but, well, if you've seen it, Cardcaptor Sakura is a very pink and fluffy show. I don't mean it in a bad way, but if you showed a 7-year-old boy like the episode about baking cakes for your dad, some of them would have been like, ugh, no, that smells.
But here's the thing, in order to make this show appeal more to boys, they took her name out of the title and just called it Cardcaptors, and made Sakura into a bumbling moron.
They edited a lot of the episodes so that Lee had a lot more airtime and Sakura had less airtime. They also decided that, you know what, boys don't like romance at all, so all of the even vaguely romantic elements were removed.
And all of the parts with Shaoran blushing over Yukito were definitely removed.
Oh yes, because for those of you who don't know, Cardcaptor Sakura is also kind of a very gay show in parts. You have Tomoyo's crush on Sakura. You have Toya and Yukito.
You have Tomoyo's mom's crush on Sakura's mom. Honestly, I think Sakura's dad might be the only 100% straight person in the entire series.
But yes, they cut out all the romance to the point where I'm gonna forget his name, but like the annoying kid who lies all the time and the really smart girl, they were changed to cousins in the dub, so it made sense why they're always, yes, they made heterosexual cousins. Apparently now it's just like Oprah, like, your cousins and your cousins and your cousins.
What did they do with the girl who wants to shag her teacher?
The girl who has a crush on her teacher, they redubbed it that she actually has a deep-held fear of her teacher, and whenever she's making a weird face around him, she's just like, oh no, Mr. Tirana, my least favorite teacher, ah! And I'm like, that's the opposite of what you think. But there is so much edited. In the US, I believe only something like 35 out of the 60 episodes were aired, many of which were aired out of order. In the UK, they got like 50 out of 58, but they had to cut like the one episode where Kenoberos eats liquor chocolates and gets wasted. But yeah, we're gonna, here's the thing. While in America, we were really trying to change these shows to get dudes to watch them.
In Japan, some folks were finding out that you didn't need to erase the female characters to get guys to watch these shows.
But before we talk about that, we're gonna need to go back to 1993 and talk about something a little weirder.
But equally gay.
All right, I'm not gonna say
Revolutionary Girl Utena is a show that's become iconic both as a magical girl show and as a classic Yuri, despite not strictly being either of those things.
The thing is, Utena, no, we're not one of those people, don't worry. But Utena is kind of a deconstruction of basically everything in the shoujo genre at that point.
It's a hodgepodge of things like Rose of Versailles, Princess Knight, European fairy tales, as well as a whole lot of tropes stolen from yaoi and Class S Yuri, because a lot of those genres had all started as subtypes of shoujo.
Yes, we'll be talking in our bar panel about how shoujo invented yaoi, and if we were doing our Yuri panel, we'd talk about shoujo Yuri. And you know what? Much like the kind of traditional magical girl shows, it's got villains who are based on psychological problems.
And a magical pink flower ring that transforms Utena into a slightly frillier Utena.
Now, let's talk about the plot of Utena. I don't know what the plot of Utena is.
It's about a girl who may or may not be a lesbian or may or may not be transgender, going to a school that may or may not exist, and competing in allegorical sword fights to protect a princess who may or may not exist and may or may not be human.
Hell, there is even an entire season of Utena, which may or may not be the hallucination of a ghost.
But what we do know about Utena is it's loaded to the gills with esoteric symbolism. There are countless references to philosophical, religious texts, Freudian imagery, allusions to the darker subtext of supposedly cute shoujo tropes like the whole mysterious older boyfriend trope. Oh, they go a very dark place with the mysterious
In Utena, the mysterious older boyfriend is the worst person. Now, in addition to all this, as we're kind of alluding to, Utena is a very dark show compared to how it might seem at first. The first 8 or 10 episodes are kind of formulaic, but then you start learning all the secrets about the mysterious eldritch forces which oversee the sword fights.
Yeah, there's an entire third act that involves witches.
And there's also the fighters' tragic and occasionally triggering backstories.
Which may sound familiar to some of you guys, but before I jump into that kettle of fish, we need to talk about men.
Let's talk about men. Okay, as the 90s rolled into the 2000s, companies were finding out that a lot of shows made for young girls were making incredible amounts of money
from adult male fans.
You see, the moe movement was just beginning, which meant there were just as many adult otaku watching shows like Mermaid Melody as there were preteen girls. And this is where the magical girl universe begins to split in two. Because we are going to talk about that massive divide right now that happened in the 2000s.
The massive divide between...
Let's play Spot the Target Audience of this show.
One of these is about a bunch of girls in goofy pajamas having a sleepover. The other one is about a naked chick taking her panties off.
Well, no, the other one is UFO Ultra Maiden Valkyrie, aka your least favorite show ever. Now, as goofy as this may seem, this dichotomy has kind of defined the magical girl genre for almost 20 years. You get to see a very sharp split between shows made for girls in elementary school and shows made for otaku.
A sharp split, you mean a cleavage, so to speak.
Badum-tish.
This is what happens when I try to make jokes. They don't go over well.
So what happens when you take kids' fantasy cartoons and decide to age them up a bit? Well, for one, they're gonna get a little bootier.
Seinen Magical Girls series have a pretty strong male gaze. For example, people realize that when a girl is transforming, you can sneak in some tasteful nudity.
Real men of genius. Put booty in the show.
In addition to this, the shows got a lot of darker. The people these shows were aimed at were the kind of people who grew up watching stuff like Evangelion. So there's a lot of character death, and it goes places that the kids' versions of these shows would never go.
Some of these get incredibly disturbing. And finally, we have
The Gay.
yes, Sailor Moon, Cardcaptors, and Utena had all had canonically queer characters, but it was the Seinen Magical Girl boom which really amped things up.
But of course, these girls aren't actually in love most of the time. It's just ship teasing and suggestive promo artwork, so that the straight men who buy lots and lots of doujin know that it's still okay to buy all of the naked pictures of these girls. There's going to be a ton of material.
There's going to be a ton of girlfriends material.
No.
Okay. Now in 2004, we did have 4 seinen shows which would become iconic and which really codified this.
Just pictures, we put this in. Y'all know what the definition of seinen is, right? Seinen are shows aimed at an adult male audience.
Yeah, so it's shonen is usually for teen boys, seinen is for 20 and older. So let's talk about these 4 shows, shall we? Starting with one of my favorites, and we're just going to play the opening. Gotta love that gay space boy.
The Pretty Cure series is about a series of magical girl duos, which right off the bat sounds gay, even if they weren't flying through a magical rainbow void.
Well, the thing is about Precure, you always have the main pair who can only ever use their attacks if they're holding hands, which now that I think about it sounds a lot like Simone. But the thing is, Toei Animation, those guys who made the Ranger series and the early Magical Girl shows were what if we have both? So what they did with this was something very, very interesting. They had almost 50 years of experience in making superhero shows, and they managed to knock this one out of the park. Okay? What makes Precure so unique is that it is a show that works for both adults and for kids.
It has a self-aware comedic tone that often lampshades just how weird some of these classical magical girl tropes are.
You have Cure Black screaming Black Thunder attack! Wait, what did I just say? What's a Black Thunder?
Why am I screaming these things?
It also throws in some fairly dark moments.
But it never goes so far or gets fan servicey enough that it's unsuitable for a younger, especially teen audience.
Almost. You see, one of the things that sets Precure apart is it likes to have its fights be actual, like, punch and kick brawls, like Dragon Ball Z, rather than having the girls throw sparkly lasers all the time.
But then there were widespread complaints in Japan from parents who wanted the violence to be censored. So yeah, even Japan does it sometimes.
But anyway, we need to watch another badass opening for another badass magical girl show. So this show right here is Magical Girls meets Gundam.
This one I eventually have to add to the Yuri panel because this is possibly the most canon gay of the shows we're going to be talking about. Now the interesting thing about this one is every sequel features the same two girls as they grow up and get older, and then eventually they're living together, and then they adopt a little space baby who becomes her own magical girl, and then gets her own girlfriend.
I actually thought that I had a picture of the girl, but the thing is, this was the first Magical Girl series that was designed exclusively for adults, no kids allowed. This has two things. Like you said, it has a semi-consistent canon, and the other thing is, most of this show's budget is put into the battle animations. Big explosions, creative camera angles. None of it is a show that tends to appeal to people who don't really like Magical Girl stuff that much. Mainly because the action is just that good. But you know what we need to do?
Let's go into Grimdark Land.
Let's get darker.
Unakata is a show about how using your magical powers will slowly transform you from a bubbling optimist into an omnicidal misanthrope who prays for the death of mankind.
Yay!
This show is... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, this show is a very slow burn, and it does have some very upsetting content. There's a lot of stuff about, like, parental abuse and eating disorders.
But it doesn't quite reach the level of the grim, dark Mahou Shoujo we've been seeing in the past few years.
I think mainly because this is
really boring show.
Well, here's the thing, it is kind of a boring show, but also the tragedy in this show is a lot more, like, grounded and relatable. You have, like, the main girl, Ichika, who, like, by episode 7, she's like, I don't know if I want to be alive anymore. Like, you get, like, legitimate portrayals of suicidal depression, and it's a very dark show.
One of the things we'll talk about Grimdark Mahou Shoujo is they tend to go way over the top when it comes to, like, the angst. But Unakata, the angst is, like, in that, what should you say, uncanny valley
too real,
where it seems pretty darn real and it becomes pretty hard to watch.
Yeah, there's like one episode where the girl, they have a school assignment to go take care of someone in a psychiatric hospital, and then the psychiatric hospital lady starts having a PTSD flashback and trying to choke the main girl to death, and I'm just like, this is not a very enjoyable show to watch.
On the other hand, we've got Mahime.
Mahime is one of those ones that really, really amps up the darkness. And the thing about this one was, for the first few episodes, it was advertised as like just kind of a chill show about girls and robots. But now that it's 2018, most of y'all can probably see from that oddly Evangelion-esque description that this one is going to have a very, very bad ending.
Although I haven't seen this one all the way through.
Yeah, so we can't comment too much, but once I've seen this one all the way through, I'll probably be up here like, why? Why did you do this? Now, around this time in the mid-2000s, as we see magical girl shows made for older men, we see magical girl comedies made for older men.
So we start seeing a quick boom of sarcastic magical girl parody shows.
You have stuff like Nurse Witch Kamugi, which is a spin-off of Soul Taker about a bitter, selfish actress.
Here's the thing. Nurse Witch Kamugi was split off of Soul Taker, but then became so much more popular than Soul Taker that Nurse Witch Kamugi now has 4 seasons.
And Soul Taker had like 12 eps. Then you have Diabolical Game, which is sort of like Sally the Witch, except that in Diabolical Game, the magical world is a violent fascist dictatorship.
And then we have Kuni Kuni Poemi, which was from the creator of Excel Saga.
Which is, if you've seen the last episode of Excel Saga and how kind of like etchy it gets, you know what this is going to be like. One more I wanted
There's Kamishama Kari.
Which is best known for its very unique art style.
No, the whole point of this show is making fun of how badly a lot of these shows are drawn.
Now, some of these shows are downright hilarious, but I will warn those of you who haven't seen them before, there is a definite trend towards like weird lolly undertones, because it was mid-2000s anime and mid-2000s anime.
Because everything had weird lolly overtones in the weird 2000s, and
that's one of the things we talk about when we do like our Yuri panel. We're like, just so you know, this one's gonna have some very uncomfortable moments for some reason.
But speaking of adorable Ungu Kawaii Desu stuff, how about we watch ourselves a nice fun show together?
Oh boy.
目覚めたし花芽なのが14歳あれとの境に昔の日常を追ってこの生活はすっごく大変だけど精一杯頑張ります魔法少女の動画番組1月7日金曜日に放送開始です
That looks so cute and fun. I can't wait to see it.
I'm gonna get all of my nieces to watch this. So let's talk about
where Mahou came from, why it worked, and why so many shows have attempted to imitate it and failed.
First off, as you saw in the trailer, this show was essentially a massive trolling attempt. For the first few months before its opening, it was promoted as a light-hearted, kid-friendly anime.
Even though it was going to debut in a 2 a.m. time slot.
Which is usually reserved for shows with lots of sex and violence.
And, of course, the identity of the show's scriptwriter, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yes, so let's talk about kind of how things are gonna get dark. Okay, the show's scriptwriter, a guy some of you might know as the Oro Butcher. Once Massey transition moves.
So Gen Urobuchi, where do you even start with this guy?
This guy has actually been writing professionally for almost 20 years. His early successes were with obscure indie visual novels.
Called Saya's Song.
Has anyone here played Saya no Uta?
He wrote that. Monica Manson, the guy, wrote that.
Just to give you a quick summary, it's about a guy who gets in a car crash, and when he wakes up from the car crash, he sees the entire world as like an evil, disgusting Silent Hill mess. But then there's this little 12-year-old girl who looks really pretty, and he's like, I will do anything for you. And then a whole bunch of sex and murder and tragedy happens, and it is not a fun story. Then we have Fate Zero, which answers the question,
what would happen if someone brought an AK-47 to Hogwarts?
Yes. Psychopaths.
Where everybody dies.
Psychopaths.
I will say, everybody dies for a change except the lesbian.
And then the new depressing Godzilla movies. Now to give you an idea of the kind of writing tropes this guy sticks to, I wanted to use this quote. This was actually a quote he put at the end of, I believe, the second volume of the Fate Zero novels.
I have nothing but contempt for the deceitful thing men call happiness.
Crawling in my skin.
But yeah, the one thing that ties Urobuchi's works together is tragedy, and not just like, oh no, the giant robot ate like a bazillion people tragedy. I'm talking about tragedy like you see in ancient Greek plays.
So in almost all these stories, you'll find characters who start out very strong, very admirable, but then one specific weakness ends up destroying their lives, as we'll see in this short clip.
あんたさ、いつまで工場張ってるわけ？悪いね、手間かけさせちゃって。なんだよ、もう何もかもわけわかんなくなっちゃった。おい、希望と絶望のバランスは差し引きゼロだって、いつだったかあんたは言ってたよね。一番大切な友達さえ傷つけて。さやか、あんたまさか誰かに幸せを祈ったんだ。他の誰かを呪わずにはいられない。私たち魔法少女ってそういう仕組みだったんだね。私って本当バカ。
Most magical girls are like, it's okay, growing up is hard, but all you gotta do is believe in yourself and make friends. And then Monica Magica is like, God doesn't exist and you will die alone. And then of course, one more short bit I want to show from Monica Magica, because at the end of this I'm showing at the end of this ep, QB drops a bomb.
この国では成長途中の女性のことを少女って呼ぶんだろう。だったらやがて魔女になる君たちのことは魔法少女と呼ぶべきだよね。
When I first saw this sub back in 2011, I freaked the heck out. Because of course, in Monica Magica, dun dun dun, it turns out that all of these wonderful, hardworking heroines are doomed. Spoilers for an 8-year-old show, but yes, the magical girls are the monsters.
And the flop-eared Digimon reject is an alien who harvests angst from teenage girls because something pseudoscience.
And thus all of our feels were crushed as we watched like these sweet girls suffer and die.
But then after 12 episodes, the show ends on a relatively bittersweet conclusion, about as close to a happy ending as you could possibly get in Monica. And then nothing happened after that point. There was never anything that came after the last episode of Monica.
Well, technically there was something that came after. Infinite spin-offs and infinite money. They have made alternate universe games, manga, so much stuff, pop-up cafes, tie-in novels, fashion promotions, and even a series of high-budget theatrical movies which retell the story of the franchise and definitely don't try to continue it by turning one of the show's most tragic heroines into a god-tier monster psycho lesbian. Nope, that never happened.
Didn't we once get an AMV of Monica Magica of Mommy set to Queen's song "Don't Lose Your Head"?
Fun fact, for the Japanese cast of this, Mommy's voice actress didn't know her character was gonna die, and as soon as she got done with that scene, the Japanese voice actress started like crying and freaking out.
Well, yeah, because you just lost your job.
And also the character designer didn't know, and she was like, Mommy's my favorite. Oh, what's up?
Did you ever see Pre-Tier?
Oh.
Kid loves Pre-Tier.
I need to add Pre-Tier because that has a great, it's not really as dark as some of the like Satan exclusive stuff, but the villain is a girl who like, her depression becomes so powerful that it almost destroys the world, and I just want to give her a hug.
But yeah, Pre-Tier, Princess Tutu also.
I need to mention Princess Tutu.
A magical bird.
Magical bird, volcano of love. But as we know, if something becomes popular, it's going to become a trend. And so we have a renaissance of grimdark Mahou Shoujo. These are shows that realize that it's really easy to get an audience's attention if you show them lots of sweet, adorable girls.
And then have lots of awful things happen to them.
Like I said in this slide, the opinion you have on these shows is going to vary greatly based on your personal
Did
taste.
you actually put Dear Gothica why?
Yes. Because I'm a professional and I get to write my own slides. I'm a big person. Now here's the thing. Personally, there are some of those I really dislike. Some of them I have as a kind of guilty pleasure thing.
Like the next one?
No. Well, here's the thing. The next one is surprisingly interesting. The thing about this one, this actually takes the grimdark Mahou Shoujo genre and adds a lot of very interesting dystopian sci-fi elements mixed with some fantasy artwork and an amazing twist. Then we have Magical Girl Raising Project. This one you have like 200 magical girls must all murder each other. And then we have the one which...
Isn't that also technically the plot of Diabolical Game?
True. But this one, they have to kill each other. And then we have the one that I don't hate as much as I should for reasons.
Yes.
Here's the thing, okay? I know everybody hates this show. I take a little bit of trashy enjoyment in it. If Monica Magica is the Evangelion of magical girls, then Mahou Shoujo Sight is the Elfin line of magical girls.
Whether or not that's a good thing is completely up to your taste.
Yes, because it's very trashy, very violent, but there are some parts of this I really enjoyed, especially the ending, because I'm just like, the ending did make me cry a little bit.
Now, speaking of shows that most people hate,
we'll talk about that. So let's talk about the fact that we're now moving into an age of Mahou Shoujo reboots. Now the interesting thing about Sailor Moon Crystal, I believe it was for the 15th anniversary, they said, you know what, the original anime kind of went off the rails a bit, and also had all those dumb fights and Monster of the Week. We need to make legit Sailor Moon as close to the manga as possible, 100% faithful, and then for the first 3 or 4 episodes, it was animated by a team of sentient fish. They wanted to update it with a lot of like cool cel-shaded
please
CGI.
please tell me you have some of the shots of the Sailor Moon.
I need to add some shots. I mean, everyone sent like the weird derpy faces that they've compared to the creepy mask in Courage the Cowardly Dog. Just the sheer number of like animation errors and stuff. But starting with, I believe, the 3rd season, the one where they introduce Uranus and Neptune, the art style for this has actually gotten surprisingly good.
They better not mess with my Uranus and Neptune.
Sadly, after a lot of people had stopped watching, I don't know if Crystal has adapted the whole manga.
Okay, me and Kid have matching Uranus and Neptune keychains.
Yeah, we do. And I think we bought them at like maybe at San Japan a couple of years ago. Coming up next, we have Clamp tries to destroy your childhood.
Okay, it's like,
Again.
we keep watching this, and through this whole series, I keep waiting. They're gonna drop the bomb soon, aren't they? They're gonna destroy everything.
They keep dropping bombs. The thing about this is those of you who've seen shows like Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle or Blood Sea or that sort of stuff,
You know that
Clamp is, they're very, very good at making fun, happy, yay children's shows, and they're also great at making heart-rending tragedies. So the main plot of Clear Card is that Sakura's cards all kind of blank themselves out and stop working, and then it appears there are new cards, which all of them are synonyms for the old cards, and also Kiro might be dying, and there's some sort of ancient conspiracy and a mysterious girl who might be manipulated into becoming like an evil card captor,
And there's also the fact that Sakura is becoming like dangerously powerful. There's like one scene where she tries to put her school asleep with the sleep card and accidentally puts like half the town to sleep.
Yes, and the thing is, the anime caught up to the manga, like at the end of, I want to say, the spring season, and it ended on a massive note where it's like, okay, Sakura has found out what the plot really is, and then she gets her memories erased, and I'm just like, Where is this going? Please don't destroy my beautiful children.
If Caro dies, I am going to sob like so
But
hard.
they keep doing this thing where like Kiro is suddenly starting to sleep for like 14 hours a day like an old sick cat. And they're like, yeah, I feel weird lately. And I'm just like, please don't do this to me. I'll need therapy. Oh, and speaking of reboots, they're bringing back Sammy.
Why? They are?
They're trying to. Here's the thing. I didn't mention Pretty Sammy in the main body of the presentation, mainly because it's not that good. I like it as a fan of Tenchi
What,
Muyo.
you don't want to see 12-year-old Sasami's nudie transformation?
Well, no, they made it more nudie in the OVA, less nudie in the TV series. But their AIC is trying to reboot it. They're trying to reboot this, El Hazard, and Megazone 23 to make up for all of the money that they keep losing on, like,
Tenchi Muyo reboots.
No, on Tenchi Muyo sequels. They're like, hey, no one watched the 4th OVA. We need money.
To be fair, like, we're the biggest Tenchi Muyo fans in this entire con, and we haven't even seen the 4th OVA.
I have.
Oh god, is it that bad?
The 4th Tenchi Muyo OVA is a prequel to Geminar, talking about how Kenshi is a magical, genetically engineered space baby who Washu gave super. Can we not talk about Tenchi Muyo? I love Tenchi Muyo, but it makes me
We're going to wrap up in a bit, but first we have to talk about something, because if we don't, we're going to get a million questions about it at the end of the panel.
What are we going to talk about?
So it's been about 20 years since the US release of Sailor Moon, and we've gotten to the point where American otaku are now big enough to direct their own American cartoons and making them pretty darn Japanese.
You've got shows like Star and the Forces of Evil about an airheaded magical princess trying to live normally on Earth.
Gee, what does that sound like?
But the thing is, Star spends a lot of time like, I'm going to use my magic to make mac and cheese, and then accidentally opening a portal to the hell dimension.
And then once you get to like the second, third season, it starts getting really dark.
Well, yeah, they start talking about like magical society. Then we have
Being Puppy Cat.
which is about a chronically unemployable millennial who discovers a magic animal thing who's actually the reincarnation of a mysterious space prince.
And
Who speaks like Len?
Yes, that is true.
And Steven Universe, about a boy who discovers he is a magical space princess.
Except that the magical space society is kind of an evil empire, and that in order to protect planet Earth, he needs to relearn the powers that he forgot when turning himself into a baby, and also possibly learn new powers.
Because Steven Universe is starting to get really, really confusing.
Yeah, Steven Universe is, I'm sorry Steven Universe, it's getting confusing. Oh, and then,
What else we got? We got,
well, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Amethyst, Princess of Gemworld, a reboot of an 80s DC comic that was animated by the same studio who made JoJo, and in order to update this comic, they decided to make it Mahou as heck. And so let's start talking about the future, shall we?
Grimdark's eventually going to die down. We're going to see some new trend come up. My current guess is that we're eventually going to see something like adult magical girls.
Like we've had a few shows like Okusama wa Majo, but I'm thinking we might get something with a vibe like Servant Service or Working or Agretzko.
like
but with
magical girl office ladies. Or maybe mysteries. I can totally see a magical girl mystery show.
Magical Girl Mysteries would be good.
Reboots are going to get bigger. We got Sailor Moon, Sammy Cardcaptors. Princess Tutu's getting a Blu-ray release. A lot of older stuff is going to get updated. Even Kino's Journey just got another season.
I mean, recently we've seen like Gundam Origins, Captain Tsubasa, that one weird reimagining of Ashita no Jo where he has cyborg arms. So here's the thing.
Isn't that supposed to be a sequel to Ashita no Jo?
It's sort of like an alternate universe something something. Megalobox is fun though. Now here's the thing, they've tried rebooting Akko-chan a few times to mixed results, but I think we're gonna see some interesting stuff. We're almost done. Please give me your water, I'm dying. Now, one person I needed to shout out. Well, I'm going to go 2 minutes over.
This panel has been in development since mid-2016, but it was only after Sane Japan announced their theme that we actually got cracking on it.
And here's the thing, while it was very easy for me to talk about all the shows that came out in the 90s and beyond, the fact is, Mahou Shoujo from the 60s, 70s, and 80s is almost impossible to get a hold of. None of it has been licensed in the US, none of it has been, unofficially translated.
But there's a YouTube series called Mahou Profile, where Erin Cerise watches every single girl magical series that has ever come out and writes in-depth feminist-oriented reviews.
So for shows like Megan-chan and Sally the Witch, Erin's series is basically the only English language resource out there that covers anything beyond a one-sentence plot summary. So yeah, definitely go check her out if you want to see like a 40-minute dissection of Magical Girl Megan-chan.
Actually, I know what the next big show is going to be, and it's going to hit the next button, and it's going to be Magical Girl Panelists.
We are Vitamin H.
Vitamin H! The power of H!
So yes, we are convention entertainers. We are going to be doing a lot more panels at San Japan. Please check out our social media if you want to see us what we're doing at conventions like ANT, Ikkicon, Ushicon, and beyond. Other than that, have a great convention and stay magical!